Hi, and welcome to episode 47 of the Breaking Bio podcast. I'm Morgan Jackson, a PhD student at the University of Guelph. Today we've got a big cast of crew, and a special guest like always, but first we'll go with our usual hosts.
Hi, I'm Rafael Maya, University of Akron PhD student, back finally.
Hi, my name is Sam Evans. I'm a lowly master's candidate, also at the University of Akron.
I am Stephen Amlin, postdoc at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia.
I'm Tom Housley. I'm a PhD student at the University of Stirling in Scotland.
And as I mentioned, our special guest today is Dr. Andrew Jackson, who's an assistant professor at Trinity College Dublin.
Hi guys, hi everyone, thanks for having me on.
So Andrew, tell us a little bit more about what you do at Trinity College Dublin.
Cool, sure. So I suppose my background's in zoology, and I've always been interested throughout my PhD, and even still now, my primary research interest is sort of social behavior, I guess. Particularly interested in things like collective behavior and how animals make decisions in groups, how living in complex social groups affects your behavior. These are really, I think, fascinating dynamic situations to live in where your behavior changes that of the group. The group then has some feedback onto you as an individual, and I think the sort of selection pressures are really complex, and I think it's, from my own point of view, my other sort of real love is just straight up computer nerdery. So I'm a bit of a charlatan zoologist, I admit. Spend by far away most of my time programming, if I can get my way. And I just think these sort of systems where you can model individuals in these groups as entities in a computer and set them going and let them interact with each other and let them evolve, let them rewire their brains to interact with each other is just really giggles as far as I'm concerned.
Can I just say, this is awesome, because I'm tired of all the fucking entomologists on this show. Finally get someone.
Well, I'm a bit of a lapsed arachnophobe these days, I have to admit as well. I'm developing a bit of a taste for spiders. Not a literal taste, of course, but, you know.
No, just wait.
Just wait.
What the hell does that mean?
So how do you go about actually getting all the variables together if you're modeling a particular system?
Yeah, so I suppose most of the time I spend my PhD, and I spend a lot of my time now just modeling abstract sort of group situations, sort of that sort of classic like prisoner's dilemma kind of situation, or just modeling, you know, building models to understand things like the ideal free distribution, which just basically explains why, you know, if there's twice as much food over here, then you're going to get twice as many animals over here than you get here. So that's sort of one of these kind of just abstract general models that actually has very poor understanding from an individual behavioral point of view as to how the animals go about doing this. You go to the duck pond, you start flinging in bread. Sure enough, all the ducks go to where all the food's coming from. But it's not that clear how you get this really neat sort of, you know, get this neat matching at a sort of a population level or even a community level from individual behavior. So yeah, I spend most of my time modeling these kind of abstract situations, but more and more I find myself dragged back to the real world. So typically, at the minute, we've been doing some work on foraging vultures. So we started building just abstract models of vultures, giving them parameters from literature. You know, so you rely on these really cool people who go out chasing vultures in microlights. You know, calculating how fast they fly, trying to make reasonable guesstimates as to how far away they can spot food. And we just start building our model then from the ground up and putting all our variables in, and then basically winding it up and letting it go, and really just seeing what happens, seeing what falls out of this soup of guesstimates, to be honest.
So you had a couple of papers recently that got a lot of attention, and one of them was that lying one, right? The evolution of
deception. Yeah.
Deception, yes. And so that was a modeling one too, right?
Yeah, that was a really cool piece of work that a PhD student, Luke McNally of mine, started up. Yeah, so that was straight up pure analytical, mathematical game theory, where he basically showed I mean, it's kind of it was pretty intuitive, right? So you basically find that in societies that are able to cooperate with each other, that this sort of cooperation itself in the society creates a niche where tactical deception kind of can infiltrate and pay off. And what was kind of difficult though is to show how that lying is sustained in a population. I mean, it's quite easy mathematically to show that, you know, lying just runs away and all you get is cheating and all you get is deception, or that you can kind of keep that out completely. But what Luke was good at doing was finding sort of the parameter space or the types of societies that facilitate a maintenance of some degree of lying as well as cooperation. So he had this nice prediction: the more cooperative a society, the more you're going to see some deception as well. But what he did really nicely, I think, to really kind of like, you know, really get the point across, was found some data from some primate studies. So there's a lot of these data sets out there as well, where people have again done the hard work. It's wonderful relying on people doing the hard work, where they've gone, you know, and they've studied a lot of primates in captivity and in the wild, and they've recorded instances of cooperation, and they've recorded also instances of deception, where they will sort of, you know, they'll essentially lie to each other about where food is or isn't, or whether they have food. You know, they'll sort of basically signal that they've no food, they won't share, they'll take food, when in fact they've got something stashed away off behind them over here. Not behind me in my bed, of course. I don't have food stashed in my bed, that would be wrong. But then, yeah, so we had these data sets as well, and he showed that in those data sets that the more cooperative primate societies also tend to have more deception as well. So we've got this nice kind of mix between theory and data.
It's an interesting area. It's one of those areas of biology where people looking from the outside who don't study it think, you know, cooperation, well, it's a really interesting problem. Somebody should get on that. You know, and if you're studying it at all, you realize that people have been working on it forever, and there's this gigantic tangled web of literature. And it's nice to see, you know, interesting new contributions to that aren't just another variation of Prisoner's Dilemma with a slightly different parameter.
Yeah, and that's the danger, all right, for sure. You know, you're right. You know, people have just been grunting away at this, and it's still something of a problem. But yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, so we had a related paper. So Luke as well had a related paper, which was a whole lot of fun. I think, which really, you know, I sort of feel that it potentially makes a big offering, or a whole new, maybe a different way of thinking about Prisoner's Dilemma, or thinking about that whole system. Is so Luke, you built these again, playing game theory against each other, but this time with these simulation models, and he basically gave each of the little individuals in the computer model a brain, an artificial neural network brain, and this brain was capable of remembering the moves that their opponents. You meet your opponent, you play this Prisoner's Dilemma against them, you cooperate, you defect, you get some reward, you get punished, and then you play that person again, and you play them again and again. And all the theory will say that, you know, that there are strategies such as tit for tat, so you cooperate with somebody, and as soon as they cheat on you, you cheat back on them, and that's it. So, you know, there's all these sorts of permutations. But what Luke, and those are kind of fixed permutations. So in the kind of maths that you've got to just tell them you're playing tit for tat, you're playing cheat all the time, you're playing cooperate first and then cheat forevermore. But what Luke did was, by giving them these brains, and they could sort of remember then what their opponent was doing, and then he embedded that in an evolutionary algorithm as well. So you sort of let these brains play this game against each other. And they have memory. They can sort of try to combine past events and make a guess as to what the best strategy is going to be. And then you let these brains evolve. Basically, you let them get bigger at a metabolic cost. You let them rewire themselves in some sort of optimal way, and then you let this thing go for, you know, a couple of tens of thousands of generations in the computer. And then what you see is you start seeing brains that are capable of playing these complex strategies, like tit for tat, like tit for two tats, like Pavlov, all these sort of, and hybrid ones as well. You get sort of weird sort of hybrid unquantifiable ones, and that was a whole. I mean, that to me is like the pinnacle of computer geekery, and that was a whole lot of fun.
So are these virtual brains restricted to purely exhaustively calculating the best decision based on X number of memories, or do they use heuristics past a certain stage or a certain number of memories?
Yeah, you're right. So it's interesting. I mean, we limited the size, and the size of memory was less than the total amount of games that they play typically, and we penalized them. So they basically, when you were calculating their fitness at the end of a round of games, you would pay a cost for having a big brain. So what you would see is in certain societal combinations. So when you'd start off and there'd be no cooperation at all. And things just wouldn't cooperate. But then what you'd start seeing is little sort of flurries of cooperation starting to appear. And it was at that moment that we would see this massive ramping up of investment in memory and in processing power to average across these events. And it's way, way more than just remembering an event and calculating the best probability. They were combining, the brains had another, so they have these memory layers kind of down the bottom of their brain, and then up above that there's another layer of neurons in the computer model that basically integrates across those as well. And you were seeing them combine the information in really sort of subtle ways to play these games against each other. So then at these moments when cooperation is just appearing, you get a flurry of investment and as a really strong selection pressure for big brains capable of remembering who's doing what. And then you find you move to a situation where your society becomes just a bit more cooperative and a bit more predictably cooperative. So you start seeing a reduction in investment because you no longer need this brain. Basically, the brain is used to spot the cheaters. And when everyone becomes cooperative, you stop investing in a big brain. And then the cheaters come back in with their simple brains, and the whole thing collapses. The whole society collapses again. And you kind of go back to waves of cooperation and defection.
Yeah, so I'm going to derail this before Stephen gets too comfortable. I just wondered, so in your tactical deception paper, then you kind of talked at the end of it about how this could help explain aspects of human psychology where we mix conformance to moral and social norms that favor cooperation and some aspects of selfish deception. And do you think it was that heady combination of the words evolution and moral in the same sentence that picked up the ire of the creationists?
Oh yeah, that was that was fun. Yeah, so I think what we're alluding to there is this idea that there's this sort of idea that it's like self-deception. So you basically lie to yourself. Parts of your brain lie to yourself, and if you can do that, as there might be strong selection pressures to actually be able to lie to yourself and convince yourself that maybe you were the good guy last night out in the pub. Maybe you did buy everyone a round of drinks, and if you can convince yourself that that's true, then there are arguments that again, because of social norms, if you can convince yourself of these falsehoods and turn them around into something positive, and not only convince yourself, then that affects your behavior going forward, but also you might be able to change as well. So that's this sort of heady notion of self-deception. But yeah, quite what got those creationists back up, I'm not quite sure, but that was an interesting one. So I don't know if any of you followed it much, but their argument kind of went. A bunch of evolutionists show that lying is selected by evolution. Therefore, evolutionists are lying. Therefore, evolution is a lie. Is sort of the.
So in order to prove that evolution is a lie, they had to admit that evolution is true.
It was. These guys are right. If these guys are right, then evolution is a lie. Then they're lying and they're wrong. It was a stunning piece of truly stunning piece of logic. But there you go.
Can you elaborate briefly on how this led to your current Twitter handle?
Yeah. So I currently tweet under Yoda Complex, and I don't know I'm just gonna blame some guy. I'm assuming it's a guy. He was total annoying kind of person.
Sorry, we're an explicit rated podcast on iTunes, so you can say whatever you want.
You don't say that. I'm a foul-mouthed Irishman. You don't want to say that. Free license to just start cursing. You don't want that. But yeah, so they basically decided they'd be stowed after accusing not me. So Rob Brooks wrote a great article, a great blog post, I think, covering our paper. And actually, I think the creationists picked up on our paper through Rob's post. I think they follow his blog. So they sort of went at him and went at me simultaneously. And Rob gave them the appropriate degree of just knock them off and start calling them nut jobs and nut bags, and they took exception to this name calling, and of course turned it around and started using it against Rob. But they then of course just stooped and started. They gave me a mental disorder of their own invention. They told me that I was suffering from Yoda Complex. Well, myself and Rob were suffering from Yoda Complex. Apparently Yoda Complex exists, but that's not what they were calling us. They were calling us their own personal brand of Yoda Complex, where we sort of exist on such an exalted plane in our ivory tower that it's impossible for us to come down and appreciate the reality or something. I don't know, it's just some sort of bizarre thing. But I quite liked it, so I thought I'd have that.
Buddy, really?
Look, funny you guys don't jump in. I'm just going to go on with a bunch of modeling questions, so you know.
Yay, modeling.
Oh God, it's so much.
You know,
math.
let's get to that point. No, I don't want to let this go because I take no end on this podcast from everybody else because I do the math and modeling, bugs, fuck off. So since we have a proper scientist on here,
I've just made it sound interesting, so this has been quite good. I've never felt this way about it before.
Andrew, why don't you give a little intro to the audience on why we model and why this is an important part of biology?
Whoa, where do we start? Well, I personally, I do modeling.
Educate these fools.
Educate these fools. My computers are awesome. They're your bitch. They do what you're told, and they do it, and they do it quickly, and they do it fast. And no, my personal satisfaction in this, I'm just a straight up computer nerd. But I mean, I think for me, what's great about modeling, I mean, there's so many different types of modeling, and I think as a modeler, one of the best things about being a modeler is being able to flit around and do all sorts of different things, to be able to, one day work on population dynamics and the next day be building evolving artificial neural networks, which is still the coolest thing I've ever done. Or doing stats with people, or writing statistical packages, and ultimately, I think it's about using numbers and so you can use numbers to test your logic. So you can ask questions and not go near any data ever, because the answer is there in numbers, like in the game theory. It's just it's there, and I think it's beautiful, and I really, you can come up with these kind of sort of airy-fairy ideas, but by formalizing it and forcing yourself to write down the math of it, you can, you put some shape and structure on this thing. And aside from that, well, these people need us, don't they? So, often people need, we all need numbers. We all got to do some complex things from time to time. So, go modeling. It's in my inelegant way of selling modeling, which I haven't done, but I'm keeping myself a job, right? So don't do modeling. I'll do it. We'll do it. You guys don't come into my house and tell me how to do modeling, and I won't tell you how to do insects and stuff.
Well, speaking of insect stuff, then you had a big paper out recently that was on temporal perception, where a lot of that sort of in the popular press anyway, we're calling it things like flies that live in the matrix. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah,
that was all the rage at ESET, by the way. I was hearing about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so yeah, Kevin kind of aided that at ESEB. So this is one of these. There's no modeling in this paper really. So this is one of these. This is one of these. So this is where we do all these crazy things in my group, and we just starting at the beginning, we sort of had this crazy idea. I was in the train station one day, and there was just all these, like, I mean, I have young kids as well, but I was in the train station, and there was just this like madness going on around me with these kids and adults who just, kind of ambling their way through the crowd, but this chaos just goes on at their feet. And it just struck me that, really, it struck me at that moment that really that, these kids just seem to live in a completely different dimension, like a totally different world that adults are just completely oblivious to. And it's a fast world where things happen quickly. So I came in raving. What, pardon?
Hogwarts?
Hogwarts. Oh, don't talk to me. I don't do Harry Potter. I'm not. If we talk about Harry Potter, I'm going. All right. That's my ground. That's my diva ground rule. I don't need a bat levy on, but we're not talking Harry Potter.
Stephen, I think you just got told.
Yeah. There's no Harry Potter. No. That's just to show that I'm just embarrassed because I don't know anything about Harry Potter. But yeah, so I came into my PhD room and raving like a lunatic, as usual, at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And Kevin Healy, who was there at ESEB, and Luke McNally, who's the guy who we did the sort of the cooperation and deception stuff with. We just got thinking, we got talking and thinking, well, maybe this is something. Maybe this is something. I mean, maybe there's something about animals that are small, that they maybe do live this kind of fast existence where stuff for them happens quickly, and things that are slower just don't even see them. They're just living in some other different kind of worlds, doing their own thing, and the slow thing, and similarly the small things pay no attention to the slow things that are practically scenery, or might as well be a mountain in the background, kind of part of the environment rather than some other animal that's a threat. So we got thinking about this, and Adam and Kevin then came up with this. We found that there was this measurement, this sort of flicker fusion measurement, which essentially is like the frame rate of the eye. It's like a measure of how, you basically what you do is you show a human a flashing light, a light bulb flashing slowly, and you speed it up and you speed it up and speed it up until the person can't see it as flashing anymore, and all they see is this constant light source, and that's the frequency of flashing at which the limits of their visual perception, basically. So turns out, again, a bunch of people have done all the work for you. They've painstakingly designed experiments and done this stuff on a lot of different animals, and a range of different. We focused on vertebrates, so we had everything from like ground squirrels up through several birds. We had a couple of primates, and into even some large turtles as well.
Yeah, you had like what? I saw a frog, a salamander in there.
Did we have a frog and salamander? Yeah.
I guess you didn't train the salamanders. Do you know how somebody trains a salamander and how they know it's trained to conditional responses?
Yeah, so there's I'm not going to be able to tell you which one was which, but there's two ways of measuring this quantity. One is by a direct sort of electrode measurement on the eye. So you literally, it's not particularly invasive, but you just put these sort of electrodes here in the corner of the eye, and you flash this light at the creature, and then you from that signal you can match up the firing rate of the nerves to the frequency of the signal, and that way you can measure it directly, sort of semi-directly that way. Or yes, you're right, you train something. So you train some animal to respond, and you train a cat to I don't know, swish its tail when it can't see. You train it to go for food, to choose between two food sources, one with a flickering light, one with a constant light, and when they fail at that, you're right, that's how you do it. So I'm not sure about some of the salamanders and that and how they did it, but I would cross my fingers and hope that it was the electrode way.
So is there I don't know how much you looked into it, but is there a lot of between individual variation for this, like within a species?
So there is, and I mean there's two sources of that. One is the sort of the ambient light conditions that any individual. So even within an individual, there's a lot of variation, and it's quite your ability to perform at this task is quite dependent on the light intensity and to some extent also the colors perhaps used in the test as well. So there's variation there. But then among individuals, certainly so there's been a lot of tests done on humans, and there is definitely a lot of variation among humans as individuals. So athletes, people who play fast ball games, tend to have higher flicker fusion rates, and also they will ramp it up during sport. So during activity, you sort of put yourself in a state of heightened activity or heightened perception. So you actually you will ramp up your ability to process this visual information in short term situations like that. And what's cool with that as well is they did the sort of test on these. They did the test specifically on some athletes as looking at this, and they found that some other people found that humans so these sports people, when they've ramped up their flicker fusion frequency, they'll also report that time is passing slower. So they're instantaneous. So they do perceive the passage of time at that moment to be slower. So the two seem correlated or linked in some way.
Can't wait for parents trying to train this into their children. Oh, you're going to be a pro athlete. Let's get your flicker fusion rate up.
Yeah, but it does drop off in kids. So yeah, I mean, in humans as well, kids do have higher flicker fusion rates, and then as we get older, it drops off. And I mean, whether that's just some sort of goes with the general degradation and malaise of age, or whether it's tied with our metabolic rate, which also slows. I'm not sure. I don't know, but the flicker fusion rate definitely drops off as we get older.
So I have to bring everything back to spiders because it's what I do. But I know there's a lot of interest in circles very new to me in light intensity and perception rate in jumping spiders, and I seem to remember you being interested in something similar to that, maybe in lycosids. Could you talk a little bit about that, maybe very briefly?
Yeah. So when we started this whole sort of flicker fusion project, we were trying to think, how on earth would we test it, and in parallel to that comparative approach across species, we've been racking our brains to think of sort of invertebrate systems, because I mean, I think what I think's fascinating, the application that I think is most fascinating about this whole flicker fusion thing is looking at predators and their prey. So looking at specific pairwise cases to look at sort of arms races, because certainly there's evidence that things like swordfish will, again, when they go hunting, they'll pump blood into their eye, they'll pump blood into the visual processing centers of their brains, and they'll ramp up their flicker fusion rates as well. I think it's very tempting. And there's actually evidence from robotics that this is true, that if you're going to track something, you want to hunt down something and track it in real time. You want your eyes firing quickly so that you can plot the trajectory and make the correct attack path to it. So yeah, I was thinking, I mean, one of them I thought, so first of all, we thought maybe something like dragonfly and some sort of small flies, midges or something like that, get them hunting Drosophila. I don't know that they hunt Drosophila, but saying something with dragonflies would be cool. And then even simpler again, which is neat about some of the spiders, might be some of the ground hunting spiders, like some of the wolf spiders, because you're stuck on 2 dimensions. That I think makes things a bit easier, but also you can then track the movement paths that bit better as well. And we've probably enough spiders here in this country to do this kind of thing, and that to me, I thought it'd be cool and fun to do some stuff with spiders on that.
Awesome. So I think we're actually out of time, so that's about as good as we're going to get. Sam, you can always post your questions to Twitter. If anybody else has questions, where can they follow along with your research, Andrew, and follow along with all things flashing?
All things flashing. Well, I mean, Twitter's the best. So Yoda Complex on Twitter. I'm a complete addict at this stage. Other than that, I suggest you just hunt me down on the internet and find me at Trinity College and see what's what.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Flashing? You made it sound like
nothing flashing.
That's as close as I get, man. If it's not bugs, that's as close as I get to experimental bio. So okay. All right. You can come up with the segues next time, buddy. Well, I want to thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us on this week's episode. And for everybody at home, you can find us online at Breaking Bio on Twitter or at breakingbio.com for the blog, and also we're on Facebook now at Breaking Bio Podcast. So give us a look, and I hope you'll join us next week. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.